The psychopath has no hold on us if we don't take the bait, don't give in to fear and hatred and create our universe in love. Recognising that there's little or no money in publishing books, I put them on YouTube, as I will this. The channel grew, but not as quickly as I would wanted, and the viewers of my online books was low. But the real reward will come when they're picked up on as a screenplay. Nevertheless, at the time of writing, my other channel is beginning to take off. Maybe it is this channel that will bring me wealth. As a result of the popularity of my channel, like all creators, I attracted many trolls. A good many were fellow Muslims, wanting to tell me that I was a kafir and blasphemous. I struggled to comprehend why they need to condemn a complete stranger like this, as I did the imam and senior congregation at Shrewsbury Masjid. Maybe it's because, like Indonesians, colonial has left them with a huge chip on the shoulder, and if there is one area they can dominate a white man, it's in Islam. Thus, just like other trolls, it was more about their inadequacies and fear than anything I was a part of. I also got very adept at spotting trolls, and instead of not engaging, I would counter their questions and insults before they'd even made them. Was I going mad? It certainly appeared that way. Of course, the message to stop challenging the beliefs of others, unless blatantly driven by fear, is highly pertinent to my actions on YouTube. I'd been quite cruel to a young Pakistani man living in the US, and was feeling ashamed at how I had done exactly what I was accusing others of. I had judged and condemned him before he'd really done anything wrong. In fact, all he had done was to express scepticism regarding the paranormal and magic, which we all have a right to do. In fact, we had taught to do so from our earliest experience of schooling, if not before. But he seemed to feel entitled that I should prove to him personally that the paranormal and magic did exist, and that I had command of them. Nevertheless, my instinct was giving me strong warnings about him. I didn't trust him, nor believe him, and suspected there was another agenda, and maybe an agenda directed by others. Thus, when he asked for help, I jumped at the opportunity to make amends. I believed that he was going to explain that he felt he was possessed by a jinn and wanted me to remove it. I explained that I might not be able to help. After all, he was on the other side of the world and we'd never met. But maybe I could advise him. I was disappointed when he explained that he'd been unlucky in love and was rejecting his parents' desire for an arranged marriage. I felt sad for him and offered him advice to not focus on the issue and on raising his upright vibrations. This would mean he would attract what he needed. But it then became apparent that he expected me to use love magic on his behalf. Now here's the real twist. He refused to believe that I could not use love magic, and I was withholding my powers from him. I remember my arguments about people defining magic as evil. It's as though those who condemn evil impose their own darkest desires on the act of magic, to then condemn them. Was this young man not doing exactly that? Publicly condemning magic and privately fantasizing about abusing it? Could this be how the authoritarian personality actually behaves? That authoritarianism is the repression of the masses by the few, based on the darkest fantasies of the few. Whilst editing this book, I got a strike warning from YouTube. Like my bank, they'd been playing games with me for some time. And like my bank, I'd begun to think that they did not want a relationship with me. The strike warning was for something so ridiculous it was laughable and spoke volumes. It would seem that YouTube are concerned about a legal challenge on their limbic capitalist strategy and have instituted draconian community guidelines almost certainly following the advice of legal experts. But these are also guidelines being imposed by governments around the world. Community guidelines are policed by artificial intelligence and low-paid Ghanaians who only use the guidelines themselves when assessing infringements. Thus it is the letter of the guidelines and not the spirit that are assessed. Thus I have been accused, judged and found guilty and punished for the very thing I go to great lengths not to do. A vignette of the techno-dystopia this world is spiralling into. But for the last 3 years I've spent on average 70 hours per week on my channel, or 6 years if you include writing of my books. The strike warning was a wake-up call of my own addiction. Understanding the impact of this addiction on my life and the fragility of the supply to feed it, I resolved to create less and care less. But then the Pakistani man posted regarding the strike warning, potentially fanning the flames with YouTube. Like Vichy France and Indonesia's New Order, YouTube's authoritarianism has provided the disgruntled with an opportunity for revenge. But do we blame the disgruntled or the authoritarian policies? As I say, I cannot be sure he's acting independently, but I must resist the temptation into paranoia, as this will only create more problems. No, I must speak the truth and remain positive. There is a concept in magic which differentiates between high and low magic. High magic is the mystical journey to find God, which is exactly what I practice, whereas low magic is about material benefits within this world, which I largely see as black magic. Those who condemn magic cannot perceive of high magic, solely focusing on low, but maybe this reflects that they see man as essentially evil and not to be trusted, whereas to even contemplate high magic, we must trust in the obverse. You see, I consider love magic to be black magic and would never use it. Yes, I may have dabbled in the past, but now I have understanding. I would not use it, as this involves control over others. So could I have granted his wish? Well, yes, I believe I could, just as I could kill all of our adversaries. But the very reason I'm able to do these things is because I never would. This is why some feel entitled to command me to use these powers, that their desires are more important than anything that I should do or say anyone else. Since beginning to discover my powers, I've been placed in a similar dilemma many times. Indeed, the reason why I initially dabbled in areas I now find ethical. But here's the strange thing. Every time I've been placed in this compromising position, it is someone whose origins are from the Indian subcontinent that has encouraged me to do so. Paradoxically, it's often people who are Pakistani origin who condemn me for using magic without knowing anything about me, nor indeed that I don't use magic. But then it's impossible to convince them that I don't, as even a passing interest in magic is evidence of Satanism or shirk. Whilst at the same time Pakistanis also feel entitled that I should use black magic solely on their behalf. I remember Pa Eljiah used to describe the Indian subcontinent as the dark continent, that in some way it was the source of so much negative energy. I wonder if he'd already understood the dilemma I am placed in, or was he simply referring to India being the source of left-handed tantra? This reminded me of when Maddie had lost her mind, and we fled to Pa Ustad in Jemba. Pa Ustad and Hamid were convinced, as I had been, that Maddie was near Rural Kidal. They believed that Nero Kedal had gold in one breast and a diamond in the other, and Hamid wanted these. What wasn't apparent to me was that Maddie really could have granted this wealth to Hamid and Pa Ustad, or at least she was convinced that she could. When Pa Ustad encouraged me to share in the wealth from Nero Kedal, I turned it down and wanted no part of it. I had no idea that my selfless act had saved my wife's life. There was a Gundawara, large black ghost, in Pa Ustad's house, who was waiting for someone to put a foot wrong and then kill Pa Ustad's wife and Maddie. Maybe it is the knowledge of this, or maybe something within my subconscious. But the many things that I believe I can do, but never would. I only fear the consequences. I not only fear the consequences, but my own power comes from having these morals. Thus demanding that I use such powers is the same as putting your material desires above my life, a moral position I could never appreciate. Nor did I know that Hamid was standing for political office and was also asking for Nero Kedal's help. But Maddie knew him not to be worthy, having engaged in abusive, adulterous relationships. When I came to write this, I did check the Bhupati and Wakil Bhupati for Jemba, and neither look how I remembered Hamid, nor do any governors for Java Timor. To the Javanese, the only point of political office is to abuse it. But what they cannot comprehend is that when one is granted power by Allah, if you won't abuse it, it almost certainly means you're not using it, or at least not using it for wealth and control in the temporal plane. In fact, the events in Jemba provide the best example I have of the rather incredible experiences we have experienced. Whilst in Jemba, and after getting to Gulum Kedal, Titi refused to leave her mother, whom she was, not unnaturally, very concerned about. But this was Titi's final year at school, and she needed to be there to graduate and thus apply to university. Maddie reassured Titi that she would not be missed at school, have a full attendance record and get good marks in her assessments, enabling her to go to university. Thus Titi remained with Maddie for a while, certainly until she'd been in hospital and began to recover. As it happens, not only was Titi's non-attendance at school not noticed, everyone swore that she'd been there full time. She did indeed get good marks in assessments and did go to one of the best universities in Indonesia. I cannot provide an explanation for all this outside my musings about the beliefs creating reality, but guarantee that this is exactly what happened. Like the young Pakistani man, both Pa Ustad and Hamid knew that Maddie could grant their wishes, even though she and I were unclear. But what's more, they felt entitled to their wishes being granted, whatever the consequences for others. Could it be that Maddie and I really do have such powers? Maybe, but as I say, if we do, they're limited by having to use them through love, and if used for other reasons, the consequences could be disastrous. The same day as being once again upset by this young Pakistani, Maddie and I had words. As always, it wasn't what you might call an argument, and as always, it was about money. You see, I had spent $10,000 on my mother's funeral and arrangements that I was still to get back from the estate, which was still in probate. Since then, we were spending money at around twice what I could afford, rather than trying to replace the $10,000. Like most women, Indonesians, or maybe I should say most people, when Maddie becomes a little depressed, she goes shopping, but often it is for gifts for others and not herself. Quite rightly, she reminded me that Titi was about to finish university, and given over half our budget went on providing for Titi and her university's fees. Once she left, our budget would balance. But it wouldn't, as Titi accounted for half our budget and not our spending. So there would remain a shortfall, roughly equivalent to that which we were spending on Titi. Confused? Well, Maddie certainly was, and cried on and off all day at my harshness. Maddie reminded me that the next even was Satosoro, Nero Orchidal's day, our wedding anniversary, and the most auspicious paranormal time of the year. So auspicious that many Javanese refused to leave their homes for the entire month of Soro, and the night when I cleaned my kris, ceremonial knives. That we should have no bad feelings approaching Satosoro, or that would characterise our year. But it was what Maddie said next that shocked me to my core. Not because she said something I didn't already know, but because she confirmed what I could feel. And Maddie explained that the black magic attacks from Paete, Omuni and her brother, and his coven, for want of a better word, were nothing. Yes, we could feel them, but we could deal with them. Indeed, I'd only just had a divination that there was a major dispute between the Dukan from Wunagiri and my Dukan brother-in-law. Apparently, the Dukan from Wunagiri knew that they would fail in attempting to harm Maddie and I, because we had some divine protection, but that he had kept taking money from my brother-in-law for spells he knew were doomed to failure. This had left my brother-in-law and his family not only short of, but now desperate for money, especially as the spells were now returning and they needed to pay to have them removed. And now they were also returning to the Dukan from Wunagiri, who wanted no more to do with the plot. It then became apparent to me that as we had resisted the spells, they were returning. For some reason, I felt that the coven around my brother-in-law had 12 members. I'm not sure that these were other Dukan who had previously joined him to harm Maddie, or included the immediate family, but I was sure that the number was 12. Not only were the spells returning to these 12 and spilling out to their immediate families, but the strength returning was the combined strength of the 12 conspirators, the same strength that we had been subjected to. I'd long believed that our torment would end when our adversaries overstretched themselves. But what was not apparent to me was that they knew that their spells returned, but believed this only to be the spells they had individually sent, and were prepared for this. What they were not prepared for was the full power of the spells that we had experienced would return to all 12 of them. Now they were deeply fearful of each other, adding to the effects of the spells returning, exactly had it been planned for us. Indeed, this is exactly what we had experienced, and we had allowed fear to overcome us and take Maddie's mind. Maddie continued that she knew, as I did, that we could kill our adversaries if we wanted to. Yes, 12 years of studying magic means that I do indeed know how to kill people using magic, and can use love magic, but I've never, nor never will, test this knowledge. No, what we can feel now was from Allah, from deep inside ourselves. All our evil, bad thoughts and fear were now escaping us, and we could feel that this evil and the world it was coming from inside us. Yes, we both knew this to be true, but dared not talk about it, as everything was dependent on us, not allowing our ego to rise. I can only say that we create our reality from our beliefs, that our reality is not your reality, despite there being points on which we may agree. Even believe that we have shared experience. Allah has given us the ability to work with him in creating this reality, But this is exactly what is happening right now. But most of us do not create our reality and submit to the collective consciousness doing it for us. So these powers are not unique to Maddie and I, but powers that we all have and have chosen not to use. Just as we could all fly and talk to animals, plants and rocks, but were convinced by our teachers we could not. How could they do this? Well, simply by teaching. What better way to impose on a collective consciousness than seat us in rows, learning nonsense by rote with the threat of violence? Well, that is the end of this chapter, and I need to just re-emphasise that this is a novel. Yes, it's based on real events. Yes, I do sometimes mention real people's names. Other times I've obscured them. And I just want to say, if you believe that you've identified yourself in what I'm saying and are offended, then I apologise most profusely, because that wasn't my intention. But I need to say that yes, this is only a story, it's only a yarn, and I do hope you've enjoyed this chapter.